Three children stare at me as if I were a predator. One of them holds a knife pointed at my chest, steady, unwavering. I wouldn't be here if I hadn't met Nathan 30 hours ago. If he hadn't told me about the voices on the recording, I might still be lost in the desert, following whatever direction the wind took me. I wouldn't have embarked on this journey, not at this moment. My name is Ethan Voss, and now I find myself on this journey, circumstance, locked with three small strangers in an underground shelter, listening to the unstable sound of a generator that threatens to go out at any moment. The light bulb hanging from the ceiling sways slightly, casting shadows that dance across the cracked concrete walls. The air smells of rust and burnt oil, and every mechanical click of the engine echoes like a warning. Security is fragile here, very fragile. The girl's knife remains pointed. This girl reminds me of Sophie, my daughter. Sophie must be about 24 now. I haven't seen her in 15 years. But the way this girl looks at me, her watchful eyes, the posture of someone who knows a second of carelessness could cost her life. She reminds me of her in a way that's impossible to ignore. Neither of them says a word. The younger boy clenches his fists, ready to run to the back of the shelter. The other boy seems to measure my every breath. I know what it's like to live like this. I've spent most of my life distrusting everyone. The problem is, this time I'm the odd one out, and one wrong move could turn this place into my own grave. I try not to move too quickly. I look around. The place is small, cracked concrete walls, a corner stacked with plastic boxes, and on the ceiling a tangle of makeshift cables powering the yellowed light. It's the kind of shelter that only survives because no one knows it exists. I try to straighten my posture, not to appear less dangerous. There's no changing the impression I made when I walked in behind that child during the storm, but to show that I'm not ready to attack. My feet weigh heavily on the cold concrete floor, and with each movement I feel the ripped fabric of my clothes scratch my skin, a reminder of the wind outside that nearly ripped my flesh away. I slowly raise my hands in a gesture that says, I don't want to fight, but without taking my eyes off the girl holding the knife. I've learned that looking at the ground can be seen as weakness, and showing weakness here can get you killed. I didn't come to steal anything from you. My voice is calm but firm. I just need to wait for the storm to pass. The silence remains, heavy, as if the air has thickened inside the shelter. The lamp flickers, and for a moment, half of the girl's face disappears in shadow. The other Q, a skinny boy with disheveled hair, and another even smaller, maybe 10, who seems to want to shrink into nothingness, don't take their eyes off me. They must be hungry. I don't know anyone in this world who isn't. I slowly reach for my backpack, mindful of the knife that follows me. I pull out a small, sealed package of dehydrated food, the plastic still intact. Look, I don't have water to share, but I have this. It's real food, not spoiled garbage. I hold up the package for them to see. If you want it, it's yours. The younger boy takes a step forward, but the thin boy puts a hand on his shoulder, stopping him. The girl with the knife remains serious, evaluating every detail of what I say and do. She doesn't look a day over 11, but she carries a weight in her eyes that I only see in people who have already lost too much. Why would you give this to us? Her voice is dry, without a hint of naivety. Because I've been in your shoes, I answer without hesitation, and because I know that no one survives alone for long. The food package remains between us, like a silent test.
The generator sound fails again for a few seconds, and the shelter plunges into near darkness. It's only when the light returns that I realize everyone is still standing still, waiting to see if they trust me or not. And at this moment, I don't know if my life depends more on the storm outside or on the judgment of 3 children who learned too early not to trust anyone.
The storm outside groans like an impatient beast, scraping against the shelter's makeshift entrance. Inside, the air is thick, permeated with the metallic smell of the generator, and something sour, like wet laundry that never dried. The sound of the hanging lamp is almost a continuous hum, mixed with the irregular roar of the engine that insists on keeping that dim yellow light alive. The children remain motionless. The girl with the knife holds the blade steady, but I notice her fingers are too rigid. It's not just bravery, it's fear mixed with the obligation to protect the other 2. This tells me a lot about her. The thinner boy, the one with the disheveled hair, watches my movements with a sharp, almost adult-like gaze. He measures what I do and will judge everything I say, as if weighing risks and benefits in real time. The smallest one, who hasn't spoken a word yet, has his eyes glued to the food package I left on the floor, but he doesn't move, as if he's learned that one wrong step can cost him dearly. I try to break the ice, but without being abrupt. Sitting down is a sign that you're not ready to attack, so I bend down, resting my backpack on the ground. My back is complaining, as always, after so many years of carrying more weight than it should. "This food," I say, keeping my tone low, almost as if it were a secret between us, "is from before the fall. Finding something like this is rare. If you'd like, I can help prepare it. You don't have to trust me. Just let me help." The girl doesn't put the knife down. "We don't need help," she says, and the way she pronounces each word tells me she's used to pushing adults away. Maybe she's seen them at their worst. I remain silent for a few seconds, just observing. Inside, I'm trying to piece together the puzzle. 3 children alone, in a makeshift shelter, with a generator that probably won't last long. If they've made it this far, it's because they know how to get by. But survival isn't the same as living. The generator sputters again, and the light flickers. The instant the shadow engulfs the room, I feel the mood shift. The smaller man takes a step back and leans against the wall, as if the darkness were an ancient enemy. The girl moves the knife slightly, more by reflex than intention, but it's enough to remind me that I'm still being measured. "I don't want anything from you," I say firmly. "I'm only here because it's certain death out there. And," I pause, debating whether to say more, "because I still have someone I need to find." The thin boy leans forward a little, curious. "Who?" he asks. "My daughter. I don't need to explain anything else. These 2 words carry everything I am." For a few seconds, no one speaks. The storm outside seems to intensify, as if trying to swallow any chance of dialogue. The younger man takes a step back and leans against the wall, as if the darkness were an ancient enemy. The girl moves the knife slightly, more by reflex than intention, but it's enough to remind me that I'm still being measured. "I don't want anything from you," I say firmly. "I'm only here because it's certain death out there. And," I pause, debating whether to say more, "because I still have someone I need to find." The thin boy leans forward a little curious. "Who?" he asks. "My daughter. I don't need to explain anything else. These 2 words carry everything I am." For a few seconds, no one speaks. The storm outside seems to intensify, as if trying to swallow any chance of dialogue. The younger man looks at the girl, as if asking for permission. She doesn't respond, but she doesn't stop him when he takes a hesitant step and picks up the food package from the floor. The blade is still pointed at me, but I feel like, for the first time since I entered, a small gap has been opened. Trust in this world doesn't arrive suddenly. It seeps like water into cracks, slowly and almost imperceptibly. And in that suffocating shelter, with 3 children who learned too early to distrust, I realized that this may be my only gateway to survival and to discovering if this stop on my path can bring me closer to Sophie.
The younger man holds the package with both hands, as if afraid I'll take it from him, but he doesn't open it right away. He looks at the girl, the one with the knife, waiting for some kind of signal. She, in turn, keeps the blade raised, but her posture has changed slightly. She no longer seems ready to attack, but rather ready to react if I give her the slightest reason. "What's your name?" I ask, trying to keep my voice neutral. It's not an interrogation, it's an approach. Silence. The skinny boy is the one who answers, after staring at me for a few seconds. "What's yours?" The reflex is to respond with my full name, but I decide to be simpler. "Ethan." He tilts his head slightly, as if registering the information somewhere in his mind, but he doesn't tell me his. The shelter's light flickers again, and I realize the makeshift lamp is attached to the ceiling by a rusty hook. Nearby, bare wires snake along the walls, leading to a corner where the generator, too small to power much, trembles and spews smoke. The smell of burning fuel fills the air, sticking to the back of my throat. "How long will this generator last?" I ask, more to make conversation than out of genuine curiosity. The skinny boy stares at me with an arched eyebrow. "Enough." The dry answer carries a subtext, "None of your business." I get the message. No one here trusts me enough to share any details about their lives. I take a deep breath, leaning my back against the cold wall. The concrete down here is rough, uneven, and there are marks on the walls, scratches and drawings, some made with charcoal, others with something that looks like rust. It's the kind of place where stories aren't told, only left behind, like scars. As they exchange quick glances, I decide to open my backpack and show them I'm not hiding anything. I take out another package of dehydrated food and place it on the ground, without pushing it in their direction. I just leave it there, visible. "This doesn't really satisfy your hunger," I say, fiddling with the seal on the package. "But it does satisfy your stomach for a few hours. Before the fall, no one cared about this kind of food. Now, it's worth more than gold." The girl keeps her eyes fixed on me. "Gold is useless." I give a slight smile. "It depends on how you live. For me, gold is anything that keeps me breathing one more day." She doesn't react, but the younger man seems to consider my words. With a quick gesture, he rips open the package, and the smell of processed food spreads. The sound of the paper ripping echoes through the shelter, and for the first time, I feel the tension ease a single step. The thin boy approaches the smaller one, watching what he does, and then picks up a small metal container. He puts the food inside and positions it near a rusty pipe blowing hot, dry air. I assume it's some kind of vent connected to the generator. Not ideal, but it serves to warm things up a bit. As they busy themselves, I notice something that helps me better understand the dynamic between them. The girl is the leader, the skinny boy is the strategist, and the smaller boy is the weakest link, protected by the other two. They're not just kids trying to survive. They're a small unit, a group with their own rules. The food begins to give off a slightly stronger smell, and my stomach reacts, reminding me that it's been hours since my last meal. But I don't try to get closer. Gaining trust isn't about advancing. It's about waiting for others to come to you. Outside, the storm rages, but it's different from before.
Now the sound is muffled, as if the shelter were encased in a thick layer of sand. This means two things. The entrance is nearly blocked, and leaving anytime soon may not be an option. I look at the girl again. She hasn't lowered the knife, but her eyes have lost some of her initial hardness. It's a start. And deep down, I start to wonder, was it chance that brought me here? Or is each step of this journey pushing me, without me realizing it, towards something much bigger than just meeting Sophie again?
Dehydrated food tastes like nothing when you don't have water, but the faintest smell of something warm on the metal changes the mood. The youngest holds the container with both hands, blowing gently, as if the thin vapor were a luxury. The lamp flickers again, and the generator responds with a hiccup, a metallic cough. I listen to the rhythm. 3 stronger pulses, a drop, then it stabilizes. It's not a good sign. When the engine starts creating patterns, it's tired. No one invites me to eat. That's fine. I didn't come here for that. And to be honest, my stomach has gotten used to saying no to me. I lean my back against the concrete, feeling the roughness pulling lint from my jacket, and leave my hands exposed, without any sudden gestures. The world has taught me that the best way to survive a room full of nerves is to become part of the furniture. Slowly, the children move as if obeying ancient choreography. The girl, the one with the knife, stays facing me, but redistributes her weight on her feet. She no longer points the blade at my chest. Now the angle is more aimed at my waist. A subtle adjustment that says, if you try to run, I'll find the way. It's instinctive leadership, the kind the world has forced upon those who should be learning multiplication tables. The skinny boy, the strategist, takes short laps around the shelter, collects 2 empty cans, checks the level of a dark-gallon container leaning against the generator. His hands smell of diesel. The smallest, the one who opened the package, sits on his haunches, chewing slowly, as if he knows how to count spoonfuls. I feel his gaze return to my face between bites. Children measure danger without knowing they're measuring. "They're going to pass," the skinny boy says suddenly, almost to himself. The girl gives him a look that's half warning, half question. He adds, "Patrol." The word hangs in the air for a second, like dust that won't settle. I don't move a muscle. I just let it settle inside me. "You said patrol. Who patrols?" The youngest stops chewing. The girl doesn't respond. Instead, she presses a button on the side of an old radio, more shell than device. The plastic is cracked, the antenna has been replaced by a piece of wire, and a copper wire sticks out from behind, wrapped in electrical tape. When she turns the knob, the radio only emits a hiss, but among the hiss are tiny gaps, micro-silences, as if someone somewhere is speaking and our frequency only grazes. "He's been mute since yesterday," the skinny boy says. Not to me, but to the girl. Limit must have replaced the window. The threshold. The word reappears. I heard that name once late one afternoon at a rundown gas station from the mouth of an old man who sold nails for peanuts. "Don't cross the threshold." He spit sand. At the time, I thought it was superstition. Now, inside this concrete hole, with 3 children who speak like grown-ups, the word takes on new meaning. "What is the threshold?" I ask. Silence. The radio hisses a little more and dies.
The girl releases the button, looks back at me. There's something in her eyes that isn't just fear. It's the kind of calculation adults make when trying to decide whether to lie or tell half-truths. "Lines," she says finally. "On one side, it's one thing. On the other, it's another." Lines. Invisible boundaries where the sand doesn't know it's shifted, but people do. I've crossed lines like this without realizing it. Pack territory, ambush area, water catchment perimeter. Sometimes the line is just a fallen sign. Sometimes it's a scythe in the ribs. "And the patrols?" I continue slowly. "Whose are they?" The skinny boy brushes his finger against the gallon jug and hides his hand behind his back, as if remembering, too late,
that any details given away are ammunition bought with blood. The girl responds with another question. Who are you patrolling? I swallow a ready answer. Nobody, I don't have a gang, and exchange it for another that leaves doors ajar. It depends on where I'm going, I pause. In the north, there were men with red scarves. In the northwest, there were people burning tires to create smoke and attract others. Here, I just arrived. She looks at me for a second longer, as if a part of her wants to believe. But believing is expensive. The youngest finishes his portion and pushes the empty container to his brother, or friend, I don't know what they're called in here, who licks the rest with restrained haste. How long have you three been in this shelter? I venture. Enough, the girl replies, repeating the same tone the boy used with me earlier. They learned quickly. The generator sputters again, longer this time. The light dims, comes back on, dims again, recovers. I mentally count the seconds between failures. The rhythm shortens. I scan the ceiling, cracks, stains of old moisture, smoke trails near the corner where the vent blows hot air. On the floor, I see thin grooves like trails dragged toward the entrance, the pipe I entered through. Near the wall, shallow stripes form a sequence of dashes and dots. It's not a child's drawing. It's counting. To the left, under the lamp, are 3 groups of markings circled with charcoal. Each circle holds 5 vertical marks, and next to it a rudimentary repeating digit, 7, 9, 11. I don't understand it at first. It could be days. It could be distances. It could be quantities. It could be all of these at once. Who did these calculations? I ask, pointing with my chin, without raising my hands. We, the skinny boy says. It doesn't matter to you. It does for me, I reply. Numbers are maps when the map disappears. He stares at me as if this sentence had passed through an invisible filter and almost been approved. Almost. I slowly pull the object closest to my heart from my jacket. I don't lift it, I don't make a scene. It's just a short, controlled gesture, my open palm revealing the recorder. The girl jerks her shoulder. The knife lifts an inch, a reflex. I stop right there. Stay away, she whispers. I will, I say. I need you to understand why I don't run, why I don't lie about being lost and then wait for you to fall asleep. I set the recorder on the floor between us, like a tired pet. It's because of her. I don't press play. It's not the time. The tape is a rope. It pulls and saves, but it can also strangle. You mentioned a recording, the skinny boy says, now staring at the device. Is that why you came in after us, into the storm? I went in because I'd be a dead animal outside. I breathe. But I'm walking because of a phrase someone said in the background of this recording that I didn't know existed until today, until a man told me he heard it. Nathan. The name slips out of me before I can catch it. I don't know why I confide this detail to them. Maybe because if they want to measure me, I need to measure what they know too. He said the voice says, target confirmed, awaiting pickup confirmation for Sector 9. The lamp flickers. The generator coughs. The girl pretends not to react. The smaller boy looks at me as if he doesn't understand. The thin boy narrows his eyes. It's not obvious surprise. It's masked recognition. He knows something, or has heard that phrase echoed elsewhere. Do you know what this is? I ask. But I'm already expecting the wall. He shrugs, too calculated to be casual.
Sectors, there are many, he says, as if reciting a rule. Some have names, others just have numbers. It's not even close. Are you close yet? I retort. Silence. The younger man reaches into his pocket and pulls out a piece of cloth. It's a scrap from an old backpack, sewn with thick thread. On the faded fabric is a hand-painted symbol, a circle cut by a diagonal slash. It's not the 9 I've seen spray-painted on ruined walls, but it looks like a warning. Forbidden. Threshold. Where did you get that? I ask quietly. It's not yours, the girl intervenes, as if closing a door she hadn't even opened. I nod. The world has taught me that some questions are like landmines. You step on them and half your leg flies off. I back away. Not from the subject, from the step. The patrols. I try again from the side. What time do they usually pass by? When the wind sleeps and when the wind screams. It doesn't matter. So they want to be heard. Or views, he adds. And then I realize this boy pays attention to what the world shows him. Perhaps he notices fewer people than trails. Does the light attract? I ask, looking at the lamp. It tells stories, he says. And for a second, he blots out his own face with the shadow of his hand, testing the lighting cutoff. And stories have a price. I think about how much mine cost, about everything I paid for, and how much I still owe. I think, inevitably, about Sophie, 24 years old now, somewhere that might be too far away. And I think about how someone's future sometimes fits into a small room that smells of diesel. If I help you keep this generator alive, I say, and now my words choose their ground carefully, I want only one thing in return, a direction, not a map, a point on the horizon for me to walk on. You seem to know where the sand hurts least. The girl holds my gaze for long seconds. She sees if I tremble, if I want more than I'm saying, if my hunger is for food or something else. Her arm tires a little. The millimeter of the knife's drop betrays it, but her hand remains steady. Leadership in small bodies is a double-edged blade. It protects and takes a bite. Why are you looking for someone after all this time? She asks. And the question isn't born out of curiosity. It's born out of exhaustion, of seeing people giving up every day. Because if I stop looking, the world will end. And I promised I'd come back. The word I promised brings something to her eyes that isn't pity. It's heavier. Maybe respect. Maybe remembrance. The generator threatens to go out. The sound drops, almost touches the bottom of the well where the engines die. And then, by some miracle of scrap and stubbornness, it rises a little again. The lamp splashes light onto the concrete. I notice that in the corner near the radio, there are disassembled parts. Screws, washers, an air filter made of folded fabric, a cup of gasoline with sand in the bottom, and a cracked belt. If that breaks, the whole night will be pitch black. I can try adjusting that strap, I say, pointing just with my chin. If I get it right, you'll get a few more hours of daylight. If I get it wrong, you can throw me out the tube. You won't go through the tube if I don't want you to, the girl replies. But her tone no longer has the same steel. It has stone, still hard, but with edges. I know.
And for the first time since I walked in, I allow myself a fraction of a smile. That's why I asked. The skinny boy considers. He looks at the belt, at my hand, back at the gallon, at the radio. He's doing a calculation that mixes risk with necessity. The smaller boy has already placed the empty container on the floor, his gaze fixed on the lamp like someone praying without gods. The girl finally gives a micro gesture with her chin.
It's not yes, it's not no, it's space. I approach the generator slowly, crouch down, reach out, slowly, and feel the heat of the engine lick my fingers. The belt is really suffering.
With a pocket knife, I cut a piece of fabric from the inside hem of my jacket and wrap it around it like a temporary reinforcement, a mechanical tourniquet. I tighten the screw holding the pulley, using the blade as a screwdriver, millimeter by millimeter. The engine complains, creaks, takes on a different sound. Less irregular. Still bad, but less moribund. It'll hold for a few hours, I say, stepping back. No one thanks me. I don't expect anyone to. Here, gratitude is counterfeit currency. What matters is whether the light stays on. And it does, more stable for now. The bulb stops dancing so much. The youngest exhales as if he's been holding it in for too long. The thin boy runs his hand through his hair, brushing a greasy strand from his forehead. The girl finally lowers the knife a hand's breadth away. She continues to hold it, but takes a sideways step, positioning her body between the boys and me. It's protection, but it's also an adjustment to the story the light tells. The patrols come closer when the sand is new, she says, as if handing over a thread, and only one. Today, the sand is new. So we're short, the skinny boy adds. Low, I correct without thinking. He gives a half smile that doesn't reach his eyes. Whatever. The radio hisses again, a sharper cut through the noise, 3 short crackles. Then nothing. The girl touches the carcass with the backs of her fingers, as if testing for fever. The younger boy brings his knees together, rests his chin, hugs his shins. The generator roars a little louder, and for a moment, the shelter feels like the warm belly of an animal, ugly, dirty, but alive.
I lean the back of my neck against the wall and close my eyes for a second. In the darkness, the image that comes to me isn't of a tower, nor of Nathan telling me Sector 9. It's the memory of a morning long ago, when Sophie laughed with crumbs in the corners of her mouth, and I thought the world was difficult but not impossible.
15 years later, I've discovered that impossible is a word that moves with the horizon. You never reach it. You just walk. I open my eyes. The lamp pulses softly. The smell of diesel sticks in my throat. The desert outside must have rearranged itself, retracing the dunes over the old trails, erasing footprints, mixing up tracks. Tomorrow, when the mouth of the pipeline is unearthed, everything will look like a different place. And maybe it is. If I leave at dawn, I say, without forcing, which direction won't kill me so quickly? The young lady measures me once more. The thin boy looks up at the ceiling, as if there was a map up there that only he could see. The smaller boy scratches his heel with the sole of his other foot, listening without fully grasping the scope of what's being asked. The answer comes like someone putting a stone in someone's pocket. Avoid the east. The girl points with her chin. The threshold changes there. And the south? I ask, as if testing a door. She doesn't blink. The South Poles. What do you think? All. The word falls inside me like lead. Pole could be water, it could be people, it could be stories. It could be what I'm looking for, or the hole that will swallow me. I don't play press on the recorder. Not yet. But I feel the square weight of the recorder like someone sensing a presence in a dark room. The girl keeps the knife close to her body, a position of rest, not peace. The thin boy positions the empty container near the vent, as if the metal could dry what doesn't exist. The smaller boy rests his head against the concrete, his eyes blinking heavily. The night, which has no clock inside, seems to settle into a cadence. The storm outside recedes a bit, the roar becoming a murmur. The generator stabilizes. And for the first time since I entered, the shelter breathes along with it. Me too. But the air coming in is short.
Because as they said, the world out there isn't just divided, it's organized. And where there's organization, there's someone keeping score, confirming targets, waiting for pickups. Sector 9 isn't just a rumor, it's a verb. And verbs move. I close my eyes for a moment, not to sleep, but to record every sound, every smell, every word. Tomorrow I'll need all of this. Tomorrow I'll need to walk where the sand hurts less. And for a second, before I let the weariness sink into my bones, I allow myself to think of Sophie at 24, a woman who may have already learned not to trust, to keep a knife close to her body, to survive without light. Time has flown by like sand through glass. I'm still here, so I carry on. The lamp flickers. The radio gives a sharp, single click, like a finger tapping on a counter. The generator hums, steady enough. The night doesn't end, but it changes sides. And I wait for the next right question or the next wrong silence.
I was still crouched, my back against the cold wall, trying to figure out who those three were and what trust I had left in them. The girl had the look of someone who'd seen more goodbyes than she should. The thin boy, with watchful eyes and a calculated expression, kept a step behind her, as if he were her silent advisor. The third, the youngest, couldn't have been more than 9, and his frail body seemed constantly hunched over, as if the air itself were too heavy for him to carry. The thin boy decided to speak. "You're not the first to find this place." The phrase echoed. It didn't sound like a threat, but like a warning. "And the others?" I asked. The boy looked at the girl, as if asking permission to speak. She didn't respond, just held the knife at the same angle. Then he took a deep breath and said, "They didn't stay." It was the kind of answer that doesn't need any further details to be understood. They didn't stay because they couldn't. They didn't stay because the world outside doesn't forgive. The youngest, who until then had only been watching, muttered something low, almost swallowing the words. "Our father stayed here with us." The thin man gave him a quick look, as if trying to shut him up, but it was too late. The girl closed her eyes for a second, taking a deep breath, before explaining, "He died. It's been 2 weeks?" The revelation fell like a stone in the middle of the shelter. No one seemed to want to finish the sentence, but I didn't need to ask how. The way the three avoided looking at each other said it all. Death, in that world, rarely came alone. It always brought with it the reminder that you could be next. "So you've been alone ever since," I concluded, more as a statement than a question. The youngest nodded, and a heavy silence fell again. I looked at them and realized that despite their resistance, they were all exhausted. Their eyes were hollow, their posture slumped. The storm seemed to be slowly receding, but it still lingered. "We need to rest," I said. The thin man was the first to answer. "It's not safe to sleep in here." "Because of whom?" I asked. "Because of me?" He didn't answer, but that wasn't what he was talking about. His gaze shifted to the pipes, and I realized what he meant. Storms were treacherous. They could change direction suddenly, push sand in, clog the air intakes. Deep sleep in a place like this could be as dangerous as braving the wind. Even so, the human body has limits. The girl took a deep breath and said, "Let's do it Daddy's way. We'll split shifts. Always 2 awake, 1 resting." "And me?" I asked. "Do I join the roster or stay separate?" The thin man studied me for a moment and for the first time seemed to consider the possibility of not excluding me completely. The girl hesitated, but replied, "I'll let you sleep when I think it's safe." It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. The three began to settle in. The smaller one leaned against a corner, using a thin blanket as a pillow.
The thin one sat near the entrance, eyes fixed on the tube, and the girl kept the knife in her hand, now less tense, but still ready. I stood there, watching, my body crying out for rest, but my mind restless. I was surrounded by 3 children who carried more scars on their souls than many people carry on their bodies. For the first time in a while, I felt a feeling that wasn't selfish. Though I want to survive, I want these children to survive too.
The shelter had that kind of darkness that's not just an absence of light, but a weight in the air, as if the shadow itself were dense enough to lean on. The makeshift lamps plugged into the generator still worked, but the glow was dim, yellowish, and made every corner seem deeper than it actually was. After a while, the girl, who still hasn't told me her name, decided I could rest. She stayed awake next to the skinny boy while the smaller boy was already asleep, curled up in the corner, hugging the blanket. I lay on the floor, feeling the rough surface against my back, and closed my eyes for just a moment. I don't know how much time passed, minutes, maybe an hour, before a strange sound woke me. It wasn't the constant whine of the wind scraping against the pipes. I knew that already. It was another sound, something more irregular. I opened my eyes slowly, trying not to attract attention. The thin man was still sitting near the entrance, but his body was slightly tilted, as if fighting sleep. The girl seemed alert, but her attention was focused on the interior of the shelter, not the entrance. That's when I heard it again, a scraping sound, coming from the ventilation shaft. I stood up slowly, making as little noise as possible, and walked to where the pipe connected to the wall. I pressed my ear to the cold metal and felt the vibration before I could even hear it. Something, or someone, was stirring outside, on the border between the shelter and the desert. "It's not the wind," I murmured. The girl turned suddenly, her sharp gaze fixed on me. "What did you hear?" "I don't know," I replied, still with my ear pressed to the tube, "but it's not wind." The thin man was now awake, his eyes wide, fixed on the same spot as me. He came closer and said in a low voice, "Sometimes there are people who follow the tracks in the sand." His sentence sounded like a scary story, but there was nothing childish about it. It was experience. It was a warning. The sound stopped as abruptly as it had begun. We stood there, motionless, waiting for any sign that it would continue. Nothing, just silence. And somehow, that was worse. The girl tightened her grip on the knife. "Let's keep everyone awake until dawn." The youngest, still half asleep, woke up to the conversation and rubbed his eyes. When he realized something was wrong, he curled up even more, saying nothing. "Maybe it was just the storm," I said, more to lighten the mood than because I believed it. But I knew it wasn't. That sound had rhythm. Rhythm is a sign of intention. We decided to change the schedule. Now no one would sleep alone. The skinny guy and I stayed together for a while, watching the entrance and the pipes, while the girl tried to get some rest. But her rest was restless, her body moving constantly, as if, even in her dreams, she was ready to fight. Time passed slowly, and the storm outside gradually faded. Still, the feeling that there was something, or someone out there, waiting for the right moment, never left me for a second. As the first faint light of dawn began to filter through the cracks, I knew the night hadn't just brought tiredness. It had brought a question that would keep lingering in my head. What exactly found us here?
The generator maintained an obedient hum. Not pretty, not reliable, but obedient, and the yellowish lamp stopped flickering for a few minutes, as if it too wanted to hear the silence. The girl put the knife away. The thin man rubbed his eyelids, but without giving in to sleep. The smaller man gripped the blanket with both fists, as if holding onto an edge to keep from falling. "You'd better leave now," the girl said, "before the heat makes your head spin." I nodded. My body ached from a restless night, but vigil is also a muscle.
The more you use it, the more it throbs. I knelt near the pipe, pushed the makeshift grate out, and felt the first breath, cold, biting air, smelling of iron. The desert after a storm is a beast tamed for a few hours. Then it bites again. We climbed one at a time. The light outside greeted us flat, almost shadowless, and for a moment I felt as if the world had been smoothed by a giant hand. Dunes that had once been walls were now low hills. Shallow valleys had become flatlands of fine dust. The ruins in the distance, skeletons of buildings, ribs of viaducts, looked like scale models. The wind blew with a lazy constancy, replenishing the sand that had blown all night. "Stay low," the girl whispered, as if the light could hear. It was the skinny one who noticed first. "Look at the trails." I followed his finger. They weren't footprints. There were parallel lines overlapped by a third wound, snaking through the center. I stepped carefully on the edge of the track so as not to erase it, and crouched down. The sand still retained the pattern of tire treads, worn, spaced rectangular blocks, and in the middle, a deep, irregular groove. I stepped with memory. 2 wide tire tracks, axle distance, longer than a light cart, shorter than a heavy truck. The depth told me it was loaded, not heavily, enough for the ground to give way more than a sidewalk. "It's not a heavy patrol," I said, more to myself than to them. "And it's not improvised. Someone keeps it running." The smaller man approached as far as his anxiety allowed and pointed further ahead, where the trail made a discreet arc. There, it was more striking. He had the eyes of someone who collects details. He climbed the dune. "Loaded," I confirmed, and without fear of getting stuck. The girl didn't take her eyes off the horizon. She heard the words, but she was going through another accounting: distance, cover, line of flight. Then, from the corner of my eye, something lit inside me like a match in the dark.
A small glow, half buried in the low slope, flickered as the wind swept a layer of fine sand. I walked toward it, pushing grains away with my fingers. I felt the touch of cold metal, polished on one side and rough on the other. I pulled carefully. The sand parted like parched skin. A small silver oyster-shaped necklace. Levi, my older brother, had given it to Sophie one morning when she was 6. She was too young to understand the distance between wanting and being able, big enough to ask, "What's the sea like?" Levi smiled. He had a smile that still haunts me, and said the sea didn't fit in his palm, but the memory did. The next morning, he hung the necklace around her neck. "When you open it, make a wish, but keep the shell closed. The seed likes silence," he joked. She believed him more than she believed me in many things. The silver was now scratched. I ran my thumb over the surface, and the grime lifted slightly. The metal gave back a faint light, a lingering, stubborn sheen. My chest tightened. It wasn't a coincidence. It couldn't be. I'd seen the world play at giving me things that weren't mine, but that was a complete sentence, spoken in the language of my home. "Is it yours?" the girl asked, standing 2 steps away, without coming any closer. Maybe she thought I lost it during the storm, and I answered, "I believe it belongs to my daughter." The sound was low. "My brother gave her a necklace just like this many years ago. She never took it off. She slept with it on." I didn't say my brother's name. I didn't say that Levi soared above my decisions like a bird choosing a better air current. I didn't say that when I think about the last hours before the world fell apart, his footsteps echo. I simply held on to the oyster, like someone holding on to the edge of their own past. The thin man crouched beside the trail and touched the surface with his fingertips, feeling the grain. Then he raised his hand, stretching it toward the horizon, creating a ruler.
He was measuring the angle, the slope, the curvature of the trail toward a set of ruins that, from there, looked like broken teeth. "It turned there," he said. "It didn't go straight. Anyone who was driving knows the terrain. Or you know who patrols." The girl added, "You avoided the lines." "Lines?" I asked, remembering the threshold. "There are places where you walk and no one cares, and there are places where you step and the sand gives you away." The words stuck in my head with the texture of the trail. I looked back at the oyster. I knew where Sophie was when she got it. I knew where she was when she smiled, it beating against her small chest.
I didn't know where she was when she dropped it, if she did. And doubt, in my world, is a knife that cuts both ways. I knelt, took the cloth handkerchief from my pocket, it was more patch than fabric, and cleaned the shell until the metal revealed small marks on the sides, tiny scratches, tiny dents from a childhood of running. The cord had a reinforced knot. It didn't look broken from old age, it looked cut, not clean, cut in fright. "This wasn't blown away by the wind," I said, more to myself. "Someone took it, or someone tried to take it." "People lose things when they run," the thin man replied, without challenge, just balancing the scales of logic. "I do," I agreed, "but the knot," I pointed with my finger, "isn't a knot that gives way. Someone used a dull blade or a hard edge." The girl finally crouched down, keeping one foot back, knife on her hip. She watched the oyster, she watched my hands, she watched the trail. "It smells," she said, taking a deep breath, "and it's not just the oil." I felt it too. It wasn't perfume. This world doesn't hold perfumes. It was the remnants of heated rubber, the touch of singed fabric. The trail had been recently heated. A vehicle parked for minutes perhaps with the engine running, or purposefully heated to dry something. I looked back, an arc of churned sand where the trail turned. I walked over to it. The surface was scarred with parallel scratches, as if something with corners had been dragged into the vehicle. "Crates?" the thin man ventured. "Macaroni," the girl said dryly, and my stomach took a step back inside me. I didn't argue.
The world has invented new word for old cruelties. Sometimes crate and stretcher are the same thing. "Have you seen any vehicles around here lately?" I asked, still leaning over the tracks. "No," said the girl. "But we hear it," the younger one interjected shyly, and the girl glanced at him quickly, not to silence him, but to measure him. "Sometimes, at night. A different rumble, not from the wind. And light," the thin man added. "It doesn't last long. Near the columns." I followed the direction he pointed. A set of ancient pillars of an elevated road, some still standing, others fallen like rotten logs. Between them, pieces of twisted slabs formed geometric shadows. The trail wound in that direction and disappeared behind a larger block of ruin. I swallowed hard. My body wanted to run. My head grabbed me by the collar. "If I go, you're not coming back," the thin man said, without theatricality. "Sometimes it comes back," the girl corrected, "but it comes back different." I looked at the three of them, the girl with the knife, who now seemed less like a weapon and more like a decision-making tool, the thin one with eyes that could read the ground, the smaller one with a sincere fear that made no noise, only clutched things. They had brought me here unintentionally, and now the desert extended a thin finger into my chest and said, "Come." I touched the silver shell one last time, my thumb on the specific dent Sophie made when she was shy. The memory came flooding back, her showing me the oyster and asking if the sea really made a whispering sound like her mother said. I'd said yes, even though I'd never heard it. Sometimes parents lie, so the world keeps turning. "If you go, Don't step in the middle, the thin man advised, as if handing over a match and a map drawn on the back of his hand. The sand is firmer on the ridges, and the columns echo. If someone speaks softly there, you'll think there are many of them. And the light? I asked. You said it attracts. It's less attractive today. After the storm, many things go out. Those who want to be seen turn on. Those who don't use the shadow of a column. The smaller one pulled on my sleeve with the confused gesture of a child who has learned to ask permission with his fingertips. "Are you going to find your girl?" he asked. The question entered through my chest and filled my entire being.
I could have answered yes as if it were a charm, a feigned hope to comfort someone who couldn't sleep. Instead, I said the only thing that's kept me going for 15 years. I'll try. Every day. The girl measured the horizon like someone weighing a coin before handing it over. "We'll go the other way," she said. "The threshold changes in the east. I don't want to find out how. You—" She looked at the oyster, looked at me. "Are you going to go there?" I looked at the trail. I looked at the columns. I could feel the scratching of the line with my tongue, acidic, metallic. Every fiber of my body screamed for a shortcut. The world has no shortcuts, only ambushes in good lighting. I clutched the shell in my hand until the cold metal reminded me I was alive. The frayed string brushed my skin. I tied the oyster to the inside belt loop of my jacket, or it tapped against my sternum with every step, like a metronome of promises. "I'll see where the trail ends," I said. "That's all." "Just that is always more," the thin man commented, without malice. I smiled. He was right. But I couldn't say anything else, without breaking the last thing that sustains me: purpose. I adjusted my backpack, feeling the familiar weight hang on my shoulders like an old acquaintance. I checked the small blade in the inside pocket, not for fighting, but for cutting the invisible ropes the world usually ties around ankles. I pointed my body toward the columns, mentally studying the zigzag. I advance in the shadows, avoiding the base of the structures. That's where the sound gets louder. Stopping before the largest block and observing.
If the trail remains too clear after that, someone wants me to follow it. If it disappears effortlessly into the wind, someone doesn't want me to arrive. "If I don't come back," I began. "You don't owe us anything," the girl snapped. "But if you come back—" She hesitated, and for a moment I saw the child beneath all the armor. "Bring a better filter for the belt." I nodded. Small pacts keep the world together. I wanted to stay for them, but the flame in my chest spread to my daughter. The feeling for her was stronger. I took 3 steps and took 2 more. I looked at them one last time. I didn't ask for luck. Luck here is a joke told quietly. I simply remembered the faces of the 3. Sometimes the memory of the living is the only thing that steals space from the desert. The wind lifted a thin veil of sand between me and the trail, and for a second the marks almost disappeared. When the veil fell, the lines were still there, stubborn, pulling toward the columns like tracks someone laid in the early morning. I placed my foot on the edge of the trail, took the first step, gauging the ground's response, and felt the shell strike once, twice against the bone. It was a compass. It was a warning. It was a call. And then the question came whole, without makeup, passing from the outside in, with the weight of all the answers I don't have. If I follow these tracks, will I be closer to her or to my end?